Veshrin had lived 23 cycles without ever feeling afraid. This was not unusual for a Quilith. On their homeworld of Quilara, fear was something they studied in books, a biological response that other species experienced. The Quilith had evolved on a world without predators, without disasters, without danger. Their planet was a paradise of gentle rains and soft moss, where the most threatening creature was a flying insect that sometimes landed on food. This made the Quilith perfect diplomats. They approached every situation with calm logic. They never panicked. They never made rash decisions based on emotion. The Galactic Council valued them highly for this quality. That was why Veshrin had been chosen for the cultural exchange program with humanity. The humans had joined the Galactic Council only 15 cycles ago. They were still new, still strange, still not fully understood. The Council wanted someone to observe them closely, to learn their ways, to write reports about their psychology. Veshrin had volunteered eagerly. It seemed like a simple assignment. After all, humans were just another species. What could be difficult about watching them work? The transport ship had dropped Veshrin at the human exploration vessel 3 days ago. The ship was called the Horizon's Promise, and it was much larger than Veshrin had expected. The human ships were built thick and heavy, with multiple layers of hull plating. Veshrin's transport shuttle had been a thin shell of light metal. The human ship looked like it was built to survive a war. Captain Dae-hyun had greeted Veshrin personally at the airlock. He was a tall human with dark hair starting to show gray at the temples. His face had lines around the eyes that Veshrin's research said indicated either stress or frequent smiling. On Dae-hyun, it seemed to be both. "Welcome aboard," Dae-hyun had said, his mouth forming the smile shape that humans used for friendliness. "We're honored to have you with us." Veshrin had responded with the appropriate Quilith gesture, a slight ripple through their gelatinous body. "The honor is mine, Captain. I look forward to learning from your crew." The captain had assigned 2 crew members to help Veshrin settle in. The first was Hana, the chief engineer. She was shorter than the captain, with strong hands that were always moving, always touching things, checking connections and testing seals. She had shown Veshrin to their quarters with efficient friendliness. "It's not much," Hana had said, gesturing to the small room. "But it's safe. Strong walls, good seals, emergency supplies in that locker there." Veshrin had looked at the emergency supplies. There were ration packs, water containers, a breathing mask, and something that looked like a weapon. "Why would I need these things in my quarters?" Hana had paused, then smiled that human smile. "Probably won't. But better to have them and not need them, right?" This had confused Veshrin. If the supplies were not needed, why store them? But Veshrin had not asked. Cultural differences were expected. The second crew member was Tai Min, the security officer. He was younger than the others, with quick eyes that constantly scanned every room he entered. He never seemed to relax. Even when sitting, his body was tense, ready to move. Tai Min had given Veshrin a tour of the ship. He had pointed out emergency exits on every level. He had shown Veshrin how to seal blast doors. He had demonstrated the alarm systems. "If you hear this sound," Tai Min had said, playing a loud wailing noise, "you go to the nearest safe room. Don't try to get back to your quarters, just get to safety, understand?" "I understand the instructions," Veshrin had replied, "but what would cause this alarm?" Tai Min had listed things: hull breach, hostile boarding, contamination, reactor failure, unknown threat. The list had been long. Veshrin had felt something unfamiliar in their core, a slight discomfort. So many things could apparently go wrong on a human ship. Over the next 3 days, Veshrin had observed the crew carefully. They worked efficiently. They treated each other with respect and sometimes affection. They shared meals and told stories. In many ways, they seemed like any other species. But there were differences. Small ones at first. Every day, the crew ran drills, evacuation drills, fire drills, combat drills. They practiced putting on emergency suits in under 30 seconds. They practiced sealing sections of the ship. They practiced moving through corridors in complete darkness. The first time Veshrin had experienced a drill, They had not understood what was happening. The alarm had sounded. The crew had exploded into motion. Veshran had simply stood in the corridor confused, while humans ran past in perfect coordination. Hana had noticed Veshran standing there. She had grabbed Veshran gently and pulled them along. "Come on, we need to move." "But where are we going?" Veshran had asked. "What is the emergency?" "It's just a drill," Hana had said, still pulling Veshran along. "We practice for the bad days." Later, Veshran had asked Captain Daehyun about this. "Why practice for events that may never happen? It seems inefficient." Daehyun had looked at Veshran with those lined eyes. "Because if something does happen, we won't have time to figure it out. We need the movements to be automatic. Muscle memory. Understand?" Veshran had not really understood. On Quilara, nothing bad happened. There was no need to practice for disasters that never came. But Veshran was here to learn, so they participated in the next drill. They tried to move quickly like the humans. They tried to remember the routes to safe rooms. They tried to seal their emergency suit properly, though their gelatinous body made this difficult. The humans were patient. Hana had helped adjust the suit. Taemin had walked Veshran through the safe room procedures 3 times. Daehyun had praised Veshran's improvement. Still, Veshran felt out of place. The humans moved through their drills with an intensity that seemed excessive. They checked their weapons daily, even though they were in peaceful space. They monitored sensors constantly, even though nothing dangerous was near. They planned for catastrophes that would probably never occur. Veshran had begun writing their first report to the council. Humans display a persistent state of alertness that borders on paranoia. They seem unable to fully relax, even in safe environments. This may be a psychological remnant from their violent evolutionary history. Recommendation: monitor for signs of collective anxiety disorder. On the 3rd day, everything changed. Veshran had been in the command center, observing the daily operations. The crew worked at their stations with quiet efficiency. Captain Daehyun was reviewing supply reports. Hana was monitoring the engine systems. Taemin was at the security console, as always. Then one of the sensor operators called out, "Captain, I'm picking up a distress beacon. Automated signal, repeating pattern." Everyone stopped. The relaxed atmosphere vanished instantly. Daehyun moved to the sensor station. Location: rogue planet, about 4 hours away at current speed. The beacon is coming from a research station on the surface. "What kind of research station?" Daehyun asked. "Records show it's a xenobiology facility, corporate-owned. According to the database, it should have a crew of 20. Veshran spoke up from their observation position. "Captain, perhaps we should contact the nearest military outpost. They would be better equipped to handle a rescue operation." Daehyun glanced at Veshran. "The nearest military ship is 3 days away. If people are in trouble now, they'll be dead by the time help arrives." "But we don't know what caused the distress signal," Veshran said. "It could be dangerous." Taemin looked at Veshran with those quick eyes. "That's exactly why we need to go. People might be dying right now." Daehyun nodded. "Set course for the research station. All crew to ready stations. Taemin, prep the security team. Hana, I want the shuttle ready to launch in 2 hours." The crew moved into action. Veshran watched them, feeling that strange discomfort again in their core. The humans were not moving away from danger. They were running toward it, and for the first time in their life, Veshran felt something they had only read about in books. A tiny flutter of uncertainty. A small whisper that said this might not be safe. Veshran did not yet have the word for what they were feeling, but soon they would learn it. Soon they would learn the meaning of fear. The rogue planet hung in space like a dead thing. It had no star to orbit, just drifted through the darkness between systems. The research station sat on its frozen surface like a small metal insect clinging to a corpse. Veshran watched the planet grow larger on the view screen as the horizon's promise approached. The planet's surface was ice and rock, covered in eternal night. The only light came from the research station itself, a weak glow against the darkness. "Temperature on the surface is -170 degrees, the sensor operator reported. Atmosphere is mostly nitrogen and methane, not breathable for any known species. Captain Daehyun studied the readings. Any response to our hails? Negative, Captain. The distress beacon is still repeating, but there's no direct communication. Life signs? The station's shields are interfering with our scans. We'll need to get closer or go inside to detect anything. Daehyun turned to his crew. Hana, Taemin, you're with me. We'll take the shuttle down. Keep it fast and simple. Find survivors, get them out, Veshrin spoke up. Captain, I would like to accompany you. Daehyun looked at Veshrin with some surprise. You don't have to. This is a dangerous operation. I am here to observe human behavior, Veshrin replied. I cannot do that from the ship. Taemin glanced at the captain. They'll need a special suit. The cold will be a problem. We have one that should work, Hana said. Used it for a Thermalian diplomat last year. It has internal heating. 20 minutes later, Veshrin was sealed inside the special suit. The heating elements pressed against their gelatinous body, keeping them warm. It was uncomfortable but functional. Veshrin joined the 3 humans in the shuttle bay. The humans wore their suits easily, moving naturally despite the bulk. They carried equipment that Veshrin did not recognize. Weapons, certainly, but also tools, medical supplies, scanning devices. They had prepared for many possibilities. The shuttle detached from the horizon's promise and descended toward the frozen planet. Inside the small craft, nobody spoke. The humans checked their equipment one final time. Veshrin noticed their faces through the suit helmets. Focused, alert, not afraid exactly, but something else. Ready. The shuttle landed near the research station's main entrance. Through the windows, Veshrin could see the structure more clearly now. It was larger than it had appeared from space, with multiple buildings connected by covered walkways. Some lights were on. Others flickered. Some were completely dark. Stay close, Daehyun said as they exited the shuttle. Don't wander off. If something happens, you run back to the shuttle. Understood? Everyone agreed. Veshrin tried to walk normally, but the frozen ground was difficult to manage. The humans moved carefully but steadily. They had done this before, clearly. Walked on dangerous worlds. Entered unknown situations. The main entrance was sealed but unlocked. Taemin opened it manually, his weapon ready. Beyond was an airlock still functioning. They cycled through one at a time. Inside the station, the air was breathable but cold. Emergency lighting cast everything in a dim red glow. The corridor ahead stretched into darkness. Stay in formation, Taemin said quietly. Hana, you're in the middle with Veshrin. Captain and I will take point and rear. They moved forward slowly. Veshrin tried to understand what they were looking for, but everything seemed wrong. The corridor was empty. There were no people, but there were signs of people. A dropped data pad, an overturned cart, a chair knocked over. Looks like they left in a hurry, Hana whispered. They found the first room off the main corridor, a common area with tables and chairs. Food was still on some of the tables, half-eaten. Drinks had been spilled. A view screen on the wall was cracked. Veshrin's body began to feel strange. A tightness in their core that they had never experienced before. The suit's heating was working fine, but Veshrin felt cold anyway. No bodies, Taemin observed. That's good, right? Maybe, Daehyun said. Or maybe they had time to run. Run from what? Veshrin asked. Nobody answered. They continued deeper into the station. More empty rooms. More signs of hasty departure. A lab with equipment still running. A storage area with containers opened and contents scattered. Everywhere, the dim red light made shadows that seemed to move. Veshrin's discomfort was growing stronger. Every empty room felt wrong. Every distant sound made them want to stop moving. On Quilara, buildings were full of people and light and conversation. This place was a tomb. They found a computer terminal that was still active. Hana accessed it while the others kept watch. I've got the station logs, she said after a moment. Last entry was 4 days ago. What does it say? Daehyun asked. Hana was quiet for a moment, reading. Then, they were studying something. Something they found in a crashed ship on the other side of the planet. They brought samples back here. What kind of samples? Biological. Dormant, they thought. But 3 days ago, one of the samples started showing activity. The next log entry says they were trying to contain it. The entry after that, Hana paused. The entry after that just says it's awake and then nothing else. Taemin's grip tightened on his weapon. We should leave now. Daehyun nodded, agreed. If there are survivors, they'll be in the shelter areas. We checked those quickly and then, A sound echoed through the station, distant but clear. A shriek, not mechanical, not human, something else, something alive. Veshran's body did something it had never done before. It locked. Every part of them froze solid. They could not move, could not speak. Their body had simply stopped responding to their commands. The other humans heard it too. But they did not freeze. They tensed, yes. Their breathing quickened, yes. But they moved. Taemin stepped in front of the group, weapon up. Hana grabbed Veshran and started pulling them back toward the exit. Daehyun brought up the rear, watching the dark corridor behind them. Move, 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 Daehyun said urgently but quietly. Veshran wanted to move, wanted to run. But their body would not obey. This was the Quillith fear response, they realized distantly. Total paralysis, freezing in place. On a world without predators, it had never mattered. Here it was a death sentence. Hana was strong. She pulled Veshran along bodily, half dragging them through the corridors. The humans moved fast now, no longer cautious, just quick. More sounds echoed through the station. Closer now, multiple sources. Things were moving in the darkness. They reached the airlock. Taemin cycled it open. The four of them pushed through. On the other side, they ran for the shuttle. Veshran's paralysis was breaking slightly. Their bodies starting to respond again, but they were slow. So slow compared to the humans, they reached the shuttle. Taemin slammed the hatch closed and engaged the locks. Daehyun rushed to the pilot controls. Hana strapped Veshran into a seat before securing herself. "Captain?" Taemin said, looking out the window. "The station entrance." Veshran turned to look. Through the shuttle window, they could see the station airlock. It was opening. Something was coming out. No, not something. Multiple somethings. Veshran's mind struggled to process what they were seeing. The creatures were large, maybe twice the size of a human. They had too many limbs. Their bodies were covered in hard plates that reflected the emergency lights. And they moved fast. So fast. "Engines now," Taemin said. Daehyun was already working the controls. The shuttle lifted off the frozen ground. But something hit them. A heavy impact on the hull. Alarms started screaming. "We're damaged," Hana said, checking her console. Hull breach in the cargo section. Fuel line ruptured. Another impact. The shuttle tilted. Through the window, Veshran saw one of the creatures clinging to the hull. It was trying to tear through the metal. Taemin opened a panel and grabbed a tool. "Keep it steady," he told Daehyun. Then he unsealed the inner cargo hatch. "Are you insane?" Hana shouted. "We can't fly like this," Taemin shouted back. He opened the cargo section. The creature was right there, pulling itself through the breach. Taemin did something with the tool. There was a bright flash. The creature shrieked and fell away from the shuttle. Taemin sealed the hatch. "Go, go, go!" The shuttle climbed fast, leaving the frozen planet behind. More creatures were emerging from the station now. But they could not fly. The shuttle escaped their reach. Inside the cabin, everyone was breathing hard. Except Veshran, who was not breathing at all. They were shaking. Their body was producing fluids they had never seen before. Stress responses, fear responses, things that Quillith bodies could do but never needed to do. "Horizon's promise, this is Shuttle 1. Daehyun said into the comm. "We're coming back." "We have a problem." "What kind of problem?" came the response from the ship. "We need to destroy the research station immediately." There was a pause. "Explain." "There are creatures down there, hostile, intelligent, and they were working on the shuttle. They knew what would keep us from leaving. They were trying to trap us." Another pause. Longer this time. Then, "Understood. Returning to the ship and we'll deal with it." The shuttle docked with the Horizon's promise. Veshran could barely move on their own. Hana helped them out, her face full of concern. "You okay?" Veshran could not answer. They were not okay. For the first time in their entire life, they understood what danger meant, what death meant, what fear meant, and they realized something else. The humans had been afraid too. They had to be. Those creatures were nightmare things, death on legs. But the humans had not frozen. They had moved. Veshran sat in the medical bay while the doctor examined them. The doctor was checking Veshran's stress levels, which were dangerously high for a Quillith. On the monitor, Veshran could see their own body chemistry. Everything was wrong. Chemicals that should never appear in a Quillith body were flooding their system. "You need rest," the doctor said gently. "Your body isn't designed for this kind of stress. Go to your quarters. Try to calm down." But Veshran could not calm down. Every time they closed their eyes, they saw those creatures. The way they moved, the way their limbs bent at wrong angles, the way they had clung to the shuttle, intelligent enough to trap prey, to plan, to hunt. Veshrin returned to their quarters but could not rest. Instead, they watched the security footage from the shuttle on their personal terminal. They watched it again and again, trying to understand what had happened, trying to understand how the humans had survived when Veshrin had been completely helpless. A knock on the door. Veshrin opened it to find Hana standing there with 2 cups of something hot. "Thought you might want company," Hana said. "Can I come in?" Veshrin gestured her inside. Hana sat down and offered one of the cups. "It's tea, chamomile, supposed to help with stress." They sat in silence for a moment. Veshrin tried the tea. It was warm and tasted like flowers. "Not unpleasant," I froze. Veshrin finally said. "When I heard that sound, my body just stopped. I could not move at all." Hana nodded. "That's your species' fear response. I read about it in the briefing materials. On my world, it never mattered. There was nothing to fear, nothing to run from." Veshrin looked at Hana. "But you were afraid too. I could see it. Yet you still moved. How?" Hana was quiet for a moment, thinking. "Fear doesn't mean you give up. It means what you're doing matters. If it didn't matter, you wouldn't be afraid." "I don't understand." "Look," Hana said, leaning forward. "I was terrified down there. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely hold on to you. My heart was pounding like it wanted to explode. But you needed help. The captain and Taemin needed me to do my part, so I did. Not because the fear went away, but because other things were more important than the fear." Veshrin absorbed this. On Kalara, they had no context for such choices. "You choose to act despite fear. This is what humans do?" "Every day," Hana said with a small smile. "Some days it's big fears like today. Some days it's small fears. Fear of failure, fear of embarrassment, fear of loss. But yeah, we act anyway. That's kind of our thing." She finished her tea and stood. "Get some rest if you can. Tomorrow's going to be busy. We need to figure out what those things were and report it to the council." After Hana left, Veshrin tried to rest again. Sleep came eventually, but it was not peaceful. Dreams filled with chitinous limbs and red emergency lights. The next morning, the senior crew gathered in the conference room. Veshrin attended, still shaky but functional. Captain Dae-hyun pulled up the data they had managed to collect. The research station was studying a crashed ship. Dae-hyun began. The ship was old. Maybe thousands of years old. The creatures inside were in some kind of stasis. When the researchers brought samples back to the station, they woke up. "Do we know what they are?" asked the science officer. "Not yet. But based on their morphology and behavior, they're definitely predators. Evolved for hunting. Maybe even designed for it. And they're smart. Smart enough to try to sabotage our shuttle." Taemin spoke up. "We destroyed the station, but some of those things might have survived underground. We need to send a warning to the council. That planet needs to be quarantined." Everyone agreed. The meeting continued with technical discussions about reports and procedures. Veshrin listened but could not focus. Their mind kept drifting back to the station, to the moment of paralysis, to the helplessness. After the meeting, Taemin approached Veshrin. "You did okay down there?" Veshrin looked at him in surprise. I froze. I was useless. Hana had to carry me. "But you came with us in the first place," Taemin said. "That took guts. You had no idea what we'd find and you came anyway." "I did not know I would freeze like that. Does it matter?" "You still came." Taemin shrugged. "Look, everybody has their first time facing real danger. Mine was on a cargo ship that got boarded by pirates. I was 19. I hid in a storage locker for 3 hours. Didn't help anyone. Didn't fight. Just hid and cried." Veshrin had not expected this. "But now you are the security officer." "Now I'm the security officer," Taemin agreed. "Because I decided that hiding wasn't who I wanted to be. Took time, took practice. But I learned. You can learn too." He walked away, leaving Veshrin alone with their thoughts. Could they learn? Could Aquilith overcome biology itself? It seemed impossible. And yet something inside Veshrin wanted to try. 3 days passed. The Horizon's Promise stayed in orbit around the rogue planet, monitoring the destroyed research station. The creatures were still down there. Sensors detected movement in the underground sections. The station was ruined, but whatever was below had survived. On the 3rd day, something changed. The sensors picked up a signal from the planet's surface. Not the distress beacon. Something new. A communication attempt. Is it the creatures? Daehyun asked. No, sir, the sensor operator replied. It's human. There's someone alive down there. Everyone in the command center went still. A survivor. After 3 days. After the destruction. Someone had survived. Location? Daehyun demanded. The signal is coming from an underground shelter. Looks like it's on the opposite side of the station complex. Away from where we were. That's why we missed them, Hana said. The shelter was too far away and too deep for our scans. Taemin looked at the captain. We have to go back. Agreed, Daehyun said. But this time we do it right. Full security team. Heavy weapons. Better equipment. He looked around the room. We're not losing anyone. Not our people and not theirs. Veshrin spoke up before they could stop themselves. I want to come again. Everyone looked at them. Daehyun frowned. Veshrin, you don't have to. You nearly died last time. I know, Veshrin said. Their body was starting that terrible shaking again. Just from thinking about going back. But they continued anyway. But if I do not face this now, I never will. I will live the rest of my life as I was in that corridor. Frozen. Helpless. I do not want that. Hana smiled at them. Taemin nodded with approval. Daehyun looked uncertain but finally agreed. All right, but you stay in the shuttle. You don't leave the safe zone. Understood? Understood. The next morning, a larger team assembled. 8 humans, all armed, all trained. And Veshrin, wearing the heated suit again, trying not to shake. The shuttle descended to the planet once more. This time they landed on the opposite side of the ruined station, near where the signal was coming from. The underground shelter had a separate entrance away from the main complex. Remember the plan, Daehyun said. We get in, we get the survivor, we get out. No exploring, no investigating. Just rescue. The team moved out. Veshrin stayed in the shuttle as promised, watching through the cameras. The humans moved like a single organism, each person covering a different direction, all moving together. They reached the shelter entrance and began the process of opening it. That was when Veshrin saw movement on the cameras. Something emerging from the ruins of the main station, one of the creatures. Then another. Then more. Captain, Veshrin said into the comm, their voice shaking. The creatures. They're coming. Multiple contacts from the east. How many? Daehyun asked, his voice still calm. Veshrin counted on the cameras. 7, no 9. They're moving fast. We see them, Taemin reported. We have a few minutes. Keep working on that door. 2 of the humans worked on the shelter door while the others formed a perimeter. The creatures were getting closer. Veshrin could see them clearly now on the cameras. In the dim light of the planet's surface, they looked even more terrible than Veshrin remembered. Doors open, one of the humans reported. Going in, 3 humans disappeared into the shelter. The others held position. The creatures were close now. Very close. Veshrin watched the cameras, their body locked in fear again. But this time they were safe in the shuttle. This time they could only watch. The creatures attacked. They moved like liquid violence, fast and coordinated. The humans fired their weapons, bright flashes of energy. The creatures fell, but more came. Always more. We've got the survivor, came the report from inside the shelter. Coming out now. The 3 humans emerged, supporting a 4th person between them. A human woman, thin and weak, barely conscious. They moved toward the shuttle as fast as they could while carrying her. Veshrin made a decision. They opened the shuttle's rear hatch from inside. Straight to the shuttle, they called over the comm. I have the hatch open. The humans ran. All of them fighting retreat, covering each other. The creatures pursued. One of them reached the last human in line. Its limbs wrapped around him. He went down. Taemin turned back. No! He grabbed the fallen human and pulled him free, firing at the creature at the same time. They both ran. They reached the shuttle. The humans piled in, carrying the survivor and their wounded comrade. Veshrin sealed the hatch as Daehyun hit the engines. The shuttle lifted off just as creatures reached it. One clung to the hull briefly before falling away. Inside, everyone was breathing hard. The wounded human was bleeding but alive. The survivor was crying with relief and exhaustion. The survivor's name was Ji-won. She was a xenobiologist, one of the research station's senior staff. After the medical team stabilized her, she was able to tell them what had happened. We found the ship 2 months ago, Ji-won explained, her voice weak but steady. It was buried in ice, ancient. We thought the organisms inside were dead, preserved samples we could study safely. She laughed bitterly. We were so wrong. Captain Dae-hyun sat across from her in the medical bay. The rest of the senior crew stood nearby, listening. Veshrin was there too, taking notes for their report. The organisms weren't dead, Ji-won continued. They were dormant, waiting. When we brought them to the station and put them under our lab lights under heat, they woke up, all of them, at once. How many were there? Taemin asked. In the samples? Maybe 20. But they grew fast, split and multiplied. Within days, there were hundreds. Ji-won's hands shook as she spoke. They're not just predators. They're designed, engineered maybe. They have this intelligence, this coordination. They attacked us systematically, cut our power, sealed our exits, hunted us one by one. How did you survive? Hana asked gently. I ran to the underground shelter when it started. There were 6 of us there at first, but the creatures found ways in, through ventilation, through service tunnels. The others went out to try to seal the breaches. They never came back. I was alone for 3 days before you came. Dae-hyun was quiet for a moment. The station is destroyed, but some creatures survived underground. We detected them. Ji-won went pale. How many? Unknown, but enough to be a threat. You need to destroy the whole site, Ji-won said urgently. Everything. The station, the ice around it, all of it. Those things can't leave that planet. If they ever get off-world. She couldn't finish the sentence. We've already sent a report to the Galactic Council, Dae-hyun assured her. They're sending a military fleet to deal with it. How long until they arrive? 4 days. Ji-won closed her eyes. A lot can happen in 4 days. She was right to worry. That afternoon, the sensors detected something new. The creatures were tunneling, digging through the ice, not randomly, purposefully. They were digging toward something. What's in that direction? Dae-hyun demanded, looking at the scans. The science officer checked. The crashed ship, they're going back to it. Why would they do that? Maybe there's more of them in the ship, Hana suggested. Maybe they're trying to wake up the rest. Ji-won, monitoring from medical bay, contacted the bridge. If they reach that ship, we're finished. There were thousands of organisms in stasis on that vessel. Maybe tens of thousands. If those wake up. Dae-hyun made his decision quickly. We destroy the ship, now. Target all weapons on those coordinates. Captain, the weapons officer said hesitantly, the ship is buried under 100 meters of ice. Our weapons might not penetrate that deep. Then we don't aim for the ship. We aim for the ice around it. Melt it, collapse it, bury that ship so deep it'll never be found. The Horizon's Promise moved into firing position. All weapons locked onto the crashed ship's location. They fired continuously for an hour. The ice on the planet's surface glowed red, then white, then melted into steam. The ground collapsed. Where the ship had been, there was now a crater filled with water that was rapidly freezing again. Scan for the ship, Dae-hyun ordered. The sensors searched. After several minutes, the science officer reported. No contact. The ship is gone. Either destroyed or buried too deep to detect. Everyone breathed a little easier. But Veshrin noticed something on the monitors. Captain, the creatures, they stopped tunneling. It was true. The tunnel the creatures had been digging had gone still. No more movement. Maybe they gave up, someone suggested. Taemin shook his head. Or maybe they're changing plans. He was right. 6 hours later, the sensors detected new activity. The creatures were tunneling again, this time in a different direction, towards something else on the planet's surface. What's that way? Dae-hyun asked, already dreading the answer. The science officer checked, rechecked, went pale. Sir, they're tunneling toward our shuttle landing site, the one we used on our first visit. Why would they? Hana began, then stopped. Our fuel line. We ruptured it during the emergency takeoff. There's fuel on the ground there. They saw the shuttle, Taemin said quietly. They saw us escape. Now they're trying to learn how we did it. A cold realization swept through the bridge. These creatures weren't just predators. They were learning, adapting. They had watched the humans escape in a flying machine, and now they were investigating the place where that machine had been. They were trying to understand it. Veshran felt that now familiar terror flooding their body. But this time, something else came with it. Anger. These creatures were not going to leave this planet. Not if Veshran could help it. That anger surprised Veshran. They had never felt it before. On Quilara, there was nothing to be angry at. "We need to destroy that landing site," G1 said over the comm from medical, "before they learn anything useful." But before Daehyun could give the order, the sensors detected something else. Multiple new signals coming from the research station ruins. "What am I looking at?" Daehyun demanded. The sensor operator's voice shook. "Sir, the creatures, they're building something." On the main screen, the visual feed showed the station ruins. The creatures were moving pieces of wreckage, combining them with ice and debris. Building, actually constructing something. "Is that what I think it is?" Hana whispered. It looked like a signal antenna. Crude, improvised, but functional. The creatures were building a communications device. "They're trying to send a signal," the communications officer said. "They want to call something or someone." "Jam it," Daehyun ordered. "Block any transmission from the surface." "Already doing it, sir. But Captain, they wouldn't know to build this unless they saw us do it. They're mimicking human technology." Veshran spoke up, their voice steady despite their fear. "Captain, these creatures are too dangerous. They learn too fast. We cannot wait 4 days for the military fleet." "What are you suggesting?" Daehyun asked. "We need to destroy everything on that planet completely. No survivors, no samples, nothing that could escape or be recovered later." Ji-won's voice came over the comm. "She's right. There's only one way to be sure." Daehyun was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. "The planet's core. We overload our reactor, drop it on the surface near the ruins, and run. The explosion will crack the crust. Everything on the surface will be destroyed." "That will destroy our ship's reactor," Hana said. "We'll be stranded until the military fleet arrives." "Better stranded and alive than mobile and dead," Daehyun replied. "Hana, can you prepare the reactor?" Hana's face showed her reluctance, but she nodded. "I can. But someone needs to physically set the overload. It can't be done remotely. Someone has to go down to the planet with the reactor core and activate it manually." Silence filled the bridge. Everyone understood what that meant. The reactor would explode minutes after activation. Anyone on the surface wouldn't have time to get away. "I'll go," Taemin said immediately. "No," said Daehyun. "I'm the captain. It's my responsibility." "Captain, we need you to command the ship," Hana argued. "Then I'll go," said another crew member. "No, I should go." Veshran watched them argue. All of them volunteering. All of them willing to die. This was what humans did. When faced with impossible choices, they didn't run from them. They ran toward them. And Veshran realized something. They wanted to go too, not because they had stopped being afraid. They were more terrified than they had ever been, but because these creatures could not be allowed to escape. Because the crew of the Horizon's Promise had saved Veshran's life twice now. Because for the first time, Veshran understood what it meant to care about something more than their own safety. "I will go," Veshran said. Everyone stopped arguing and turned to look at them. "What?" Hana said. "No. Veshran, you don't have to." "Yes, I do," Veshran interrupted. "My body is more flexible than yours. I can reach spaces you cannot. I can move through smaller areas. And..." Veshran struggled to find the words. "I need to do this, not for logic. For something else. Something I am only beginning to understand." "Veshran," Daehyun said gently. "This is a suicide mission. You understand that?" "I understand. You'll be alone down there, surrounded by those creatures. And even if everything goes perfectly, you won't make it back." "I understand that too." Veshran looked at each of them. "You have all been patient with me, teaching me, protecting me. Now it is my turn to do something for you, for all of us." Taemin stepped forward. "Then I'm going with you." Someone needs to cover you while you work, and someone needs to make sure you get away after. Taemin, Daehyun began. Captain, with respect, this isn't up for debate. I'm going. We'll set the reactor, get clear of the blast zone, and signal for pickup. With 2 of us, we might actually make it. Daehyun looked at them both for a long moment. Finally, he nodded. All right. Hana, prepare the reactor. Make it portable. Taemin, Veshrin, you have 2 hours to get ready. After that, we're doing this. As the crew dispersed to their tasks, Hana pulled Veshrin aside. Are you sure about this? Veshrin's body was shaking again. The fear was massive, overwhelming, crushing. But underneath it was something else, something new, something that felt like purpose. No, Veshrin admitted. The shuttle touched down at the same landing site they had used for the rescue. In the distance, the ruins of the research station glowed with the eerie light of the creature's makeshift antenna. Through the shuttle windows, Veshrin could see movement in the darkness. Shapes that moved wrong, things that should not exist. Ready? Taemin asked, checking his weapon one final time. Veshrin wanted to say no, wanted to beg to return to the ship, wanted to give in to the screaming fear that filled every part of their body. Instead, they said ready. They exited the shuttle. The portable reactor core hovered between them on an anti-gravity sled, following their movements. Taemin led the way, weapon raised, scanning constantly. Veshrin followed, trying to keep their bodies steady despite the shaking. The plan was simple but difficult. They needed to get the reactor core into the deepest tunnel the creatures had dug, down near the planet's mantle. There, the explosion would have maximum effect, cracking the planet's crust and causing massive geological destruction. Everything on the surface would be destroyed. The creatures, the station, all of it, gone. They approached the nearest tunnel entrance. It was large, carved through ice and rock by the creature's sharp limbs. The walls were smooth, almost polished. Inside, it descended into darkness. Stay close, Taemin said quietly. And if I say run, you run. Don't argue. Don't look back. Just run. They entered the tunnel. The temperature dropped even further. Veshrin's heated suit worked hard to keep them warm. Behind them, the shuttle grew smaller and smaller until it disappeared from view. The tunnel went down. And down, and down. The walls pressed in from all sides. Veshrin's claustrophobia, another new fear, began to build. But they kept moving. The reactor core followed behind them, its systems humming softly. They heard sounds ahead. Clicking, scraping. The creatures were nearby. Taemin held up a hand and they stopped. He listened carefully, then pointed to a side passage. They could bypass the main tunnel, take a longer route. It would add time, but it might avoid contact. They took the side passage. It was narrower. Veshrin's flexible body handled it better than Taemin's rigid human form. Several times the human had to squeeze through spaces that were easy for Veshrin. The reactor core barely fit, scraping against the walls. An hour passed. Then 2. They were deep now. Very deep. The tunnel walls glowed with strange colors, minerals reflecting their lights. The air was different here, heavy with chemicals that the suits filtered out. This should be far enough, Taemin finally said. Let's set up the reactor. They found a wide chamber, a natural cave that the creatures had expanded. Taemin began unpacking the reactor, setting up the containment field and the overload systems. Veshrin helped where they could, their flexible limbs useful for reaching into tight spaces to connect cables. That was when they heard it, a sound from the tunnel behind them. Not clicking this time. Something else. A dragging sound. Something large moving through the passage they had just used. Keep working, Taemin said quietly. I'll watch our back. Veshrin's fear spiked, but they forced their body to keep moving. Connect this cable. Seal that junction. Activate this system. The reactor was almost ready. Just a few more minutes, the dragging sound grew closer. Taemin raised his weapon, aiming at the tunnel entrance. His light caught something. A glimpse of chitin. A flash of too many eyes. Then it was gone. They know we're here, Taemin said. Work faster. Veshrin worked as fast as their shaking limbs would allow. But there was a problem. The final connection required someone to hold the containment field steady, while simultaneously activating the override. It needed 2 appendages in 2 different places. Veshrin could do it. They had enough limbs. But they needed both hands occupied, which meant they couldn't hold on to anything. I need you to hold me in place, Veshrin told Taemin. I can make the connection, but I cannot brace myself. Taman looked at the tunnel entrance, then back at Veshran. The dragging sound was very close now. He made a decision. All right, do it. He put down his weapon and moved behind Veshran, bracing them with his body. Veshran reached into the reactor's access panel with multiple appendages, holding the containment field steady with one while reaching for the override with another. That was when the creature attacked. It came from the tunnel fast, all chitinous limbs and glowing eyes. Taman couldn't reach his weapon. He was holding Veshran, and if he let go, the reactor connection would fail. The creature lunged. Taman turned his body, taking the impact. The creature's limbs wrapped around him, pulling him away from Veshran. He grunted in pain as the sharp edges cut through his suit. Keep working, Taman shouted, fighting the creature with his bare hands. Veshran wanted to help, wanted to save him. But the reactor, they were so close. If they stopped now, they would have to start over, and there was no time. So Veshran kept working, even as they heard Taman fighting, even as they heard him cry out in pain, even as every instinct screamed at them to help their friend. They kept working. The containment field locked. The override activated. The reactor began its overload sequence. 2 minutes. That was how long they had until the explosion. Veshran pulled free and spun around. Taman was on the ground, the creature on top of him. His suit was torn. Blood floated in the low gravity. But he was still fighting, still keeping the creature away from the reactor. Veshran looked at the tunnel entrance, then at Taman, then at the reactor, counting down. 1 minute and 50 seconds, Veshran made a choice. They threw their body at the creature. Their gelatinous form wrapped around it, covering its eyes, getting between its limbs and Taman. The creature shrieked and tried to shake Veshran off, but Veshran held on. Go, Veshran shouted to Taman. Run, not without you. Taman grabbed his weapon and fired at the creature. The shot hit its carapace but didn't penetrate. These things were built to survive. 1 minute and 30 seconds. Veshran had an idea. A terrible idea. They began flowing into the tunnel entrance, spreading their body across the opening. The creature followed them, confused, trying to pull Veshran away. But Veshran was blocking its path, and more creatures were coming from deeper in the tunnels. They were getting blocked behind Veshran's body. I can seal the tunnel, Veshran told Taman. My body can block it. Give you time to run. Taman understood what Veshran meant. If Veshran sealed the tunnel, they would not be able to escape before the explosion. No, we go together. 1 minute and 15 seconds. There is not enough time for both of us, Veshran said. They were crying now, though they had not known their species could cry. But there is enough time for you. Please, let me do this. Let me choose this. Taman's face twisted with anguish. But he was a soldier. He understood sacrifice. He understood impossible choices. You're the bravest person I've ever met, he said. 1 minute. Run, Veshran said gently. Taman ran. Back up the tunnel they had used to come down. Veshran watched him disappear, then turned their attention to the tunnel entrance. They spread their body wider, sealing the opening completely. The creatures on the other side began tearing at them, trying to break through. It hurt. It hurt more than anything Veshran had imagined. But they held 45 seconds. Veshran thought about their life on Quilara. Safe, comfortable, empty. They thought about these last weeks with the humans. Terrifying, dangerous, meaningful. 30 seconds they thought about Hana's kindness, Daehyun's leadership, Taemin's courage. They thought about the moment they had opened the shuttle hatch, their first act of bravery. They thought about coming on this mission, knowing it might be their last. 20 seconds. The creatures were getting through. One of their limbs punched through Veshran's body. Then another. The pain was incredible. But Veshran held just a little longer. 10 seconds. Veshran heard something. Footsteps. Running. Coming back toward them. No. Taemin was supposed to run away. He was supposed to... Taemin burst into the chamber. I'm not leaving you! He grabbed Veshran and physically tore them away from the tunnel entrance. The creatures poured through. But Taemin was already running, carrying Veshran, sprinting up the escape tunnel with impossible speed. 5 seconds. They were not going to make it. They both knew it. The tunnel was too long. The time was too short. They were going to die here together. 4 seconds. Taemin kept running. Veshran held onto him. The fear was still there, massive and overwhelming. But so was something else, gratitude, that they were not dying alone, that someone had come back for them. 3 seconds. They saw light ahead. The tunnel exit. So close. 2 seconds. They burst out of the tunnel into the open air of the frozen planet. Taman threw them both toward a ridge of ice that might provide some shelter. 1 second. The world exploded. The blast wave hit them like a wall. They flew through the air, tumbling across the ice. Veshran's suit tore. Taman's already damaged suit failed completely. They hit the ground hard. Then everything went quiet. Veshran could not hear, could not see, could only feel cold. So much cold. Their body was shutting down. They were dying, but they felt something else. Arms around them. Taman pulling them close, sharing his fading body heat. Both of them dying, but together. Then light. Bright light from above. The shuttle. Hovering overhead, a rescue beam locking onto them. They were pulled upward. Into the shuttle. Hands grabbing them. Voices shouting, warmth, safety.